back to emergency, the struggle against emergency, what is that events which you noticed during those period that there was some struggle, underground or overground against emergency?
Actually, there was not a big struggle. RSS people objected to the imposition of emergency in the initial stage, and they were all arrested, and with the whole struggle fizzled out within, say, 2 or 3 months, because most of them were in jail. It is very difficult even to get persons to get arrested voluntarily by participating in struggle. RSS at that time was not strong as this time, as at present. But no party, even Marxist party, can afford to send more than 2,000 people. Only Agalis conducted study throughout India. I have studied the struggle at that time, and I have found only Agalis were able to send volunteers throughout that period. RSS, after say, 2-3 months, their struggle fizzled out. In fact, myself and my colleagues were responsible for printing and publishing some of the leaflets of RSS because they were not capable. We had that mechanism. We had some people with when I did not know where it is printed, I only wrote and circulated. We were able to send it to persons like Lawrence who were inside the jail. We had distributed the work among our own people so that if police, it was risky when the police conducts arrests. I was afraid that all these Parivartanawadis who are somewhere or other associated will be arrested and beaten to know the truth. Actually, we only 2-3 persons knew the truth. We published a circular to put Anthony in trouble because the person who led John, Karnagaran and K.N. Jaddi, the leaders, wanted that group as a counterweight against Anthony to bring him back. Because one of the slogans of that radical group was transformation through Congress. So they were basically congressmen. So they offered some incentive to John and his group, but they did not fall a prey, except that John stopped his activities of publishing leaflet, etc. Because inside the party there was some struggle, and I didn't support him for that because it was very bad for a party, idealist party like Parivartanawadis, known as radicals, to change their sides when the emergency was still in power. It was still going on. That was my argument. And most of the people belonging to that radical group agreed with me, and they continued to publish, except that John and a minority of people, not even 10%, stopped their activities, and they changed their activities mainly to naturopathy, health education, some voluntary work like Harijan. Just as when Congress, during the freedom struggle, when Gandhi and Motilal Nehru, etc., they supported what we call constitutional activities, and Gandhi and his disciples what we call direct action, or no, the constructive program like Arjan Seva, Khadi work, etc. This John group, they turned their main activities for naturopathy, propagating naturopathy, then women's activities, etc. But we continue to.
So you mentioned about RSS because there was this news that RSS chief then Balasaheb Devaras wrote a letter to Mrs. Gandhi supporting emergency. Was it circulated those days?
Not supporting emergency, but they were actually not political group, and they themselves claimed to be some sort of social work. And RS wrote letters to Indira Gandhi. That is true, but they did not, as they propaganda goes on, did not make any apology or anything like that. RS wrote a letter supporting the government, the usual stand, and claiming themselves to be a cultural organization, not engaged in any agitation. It was partly true, technically true.
Okay. That they always do that. Anyway, so what about the Baroda dynamite case, which later came to news with the arrest of Joe Fernandez?
Yes, Vikram Rao was arrested, and I would have been arrested because that when this emergency was still in force, I was in on bail myself and my friend Matai, Professor Matai. He is the leader of Gandhian establishment now. He is still with me, a colleague of mine in the emergency. We together went to meet Vikram Rao in Baroda. We were informed that uh, they were in. In Baroda Dynamite case, and Vikram Rao was active against emergency. Vikram Rao was a leader of the the IFWJ, the Federation of
Yeah.
Working Journalists. So he
Hmm.
happened to know me. So I wanted to, but he was underground, and at that time, and there was a section of journalists, particularly the pro CPI and pro Soviet Union. They were opposed to any activity or agitation against emergency. And as you know, the government did not arrest EMS. EMS was working, campaigning. They were confused at that time, but he was giving lectures and he was allowed, only person who was allowed to make public speeches was EMS. And he was able to rally the most of the support to the Communist Party, to the Marxist Party. Fortunately for them, as well as for the country, the emergency ended and election was conducted and Indira Gandhi was defeated, in particularly in North India. EMS propaganda uh, actually was helpful to make most of the communists at that time favor the what we call the favor not Soviet Union but against emergency, the support the opposition parties.
Okay. Okay.
Even people do
Yeah.
not know that they think that the Indian Express editor at that time, Mr. Kuldeep Nayar, he was the
Okay.
first to have been arrested during emergency. No, I was arrested before him.
Okay.
He was arrested under Misa
Hmm.
later after 4 days. But some political activists got arrested because they held demonstrations. Immediately when the emergency was declared, this radical group in Kerala also did it. Even though I only participated in writing leaflet and publishing it, we were able to take it to jail also, and it had an impact more than what the circulation actually is. Fact, more than the circulation, they were influential in
Okay.
uh, thinking, in influencing the what we call influential persons. We were able to support, and EMS gave a very good certificate for me and my colleagues in Delhi. So we were honored that at that time in Delhi, more than what we deserved. We got a very high. EMS had supported us there,
Okay. Okay. Sir,
even though people.
yeah, you said about being a journalist. After arrest, you should have come back to Madhubhumi. So, how was that censorship played out in Kerala and other places as far as the media is concerned?
Yes, that is a very good question. Actually, censorship is the one thing that made a distinction between the emergency regime and the other normally elected regime. There was absolute censorship. Even accidents, road accidents, were not allowed to be reported, saying that the official line is that everything is peaceful.
Okay.
See, and some of the judges there, judiciary, not all. There are good persons like Elizabeth Kurula, who who gave no, who set aside the case against us because it was a foisted case. But during the same person, some time, some of the persons, some of the judges accepted the charge that the RSS volunteers were enrolling people to their organization, and some what we call the vendors in the shop, they were made witnesses, and the judges accepted it. there was an unofficial influence from the High Court judges saying that to the lower judiciary, advising them to punish all people, and we will choose whom should be set aside or whom we should be let off.
You mean to say,
Unofficially, this was
you
given.
mean to say, yeah, you mean to say the executive controlled the media, the judiciary, of course, the administration. So it was total control by the executive, political executive.
Yes, it was so. Not the executive, but the persons who were close contact with Indira Gandhi at her coterie.
Okay,
That happened. And more others out of fear,
okay,
out of fear,
okay.
because there
Yeah,
was no defense. There was no
yes.
law to defend them, except that the structure was there.
Okay, okay. So you mean to say the rule of law collapsed? The rule
Rule
of
of law
law
collapsed.
collapsed.
And yes, rule of law is the sine qua non of democracy, but that was totally shattered during emergency. Not totally, but effectively they controlled the judiciary as well as the administration, and some of the officers taking advantage of the situation uh, made money also, threatening
Yes.
businessmen, etc., to arrest them under MISA, put them in jail. And the latest, some is happening now also. An officer
Yes.
and RTO is arrested.
Okay. So, looking back, what are the key lessons for democracy? You as a journalist and a politically aware person, politically radical person, learned. We'll call it as a lesson of emergency for the future generations.
The two things I will, from looking back, I will say that a rule of law is a sine qua non of democracy. It should not be interfered with, but it may not work as speedily as a dictatorship. But once you allow the rule of law to collapse, everybody will become a corrupt person. Only those persons who are have got integrity and loyalty to the constitution or law, they will survive. Because even when I was thrown out of my job, I was 52 years. Suppose I had a girl child at that time. My son was in college pre-degree at that time. I myself have thought whether I would have been able to, because of pressure inside the family. I find it very difficult to make both ends meet. When you have no, my wife had to work about, so she was a teacher and had to do in a private teacher, not getting proper salary, almost a voluntary work. But she, because she was in Trivandrum and we were in Trivandrum, and she could look after the family by taking classes and tuition, etc. I was totally engaged in fighting this clandestine method publication, etc. And I myself was involved in some very uh, unethical act in the sense that I wrote a false circular in this name of this in the group and planted it inside the police to create confusion and divide the party against Anthony against Karnagaran. So we wrote a circular which was planted in the police. Actually, it was not sent just for the police. We planted a circular in which the message given to the workers was never attack Anthony. You attack only Karnagaran if there is some measure. So this circular, the police and the Karnagaran thought to be true, and later on they could never see eye to eye together. So Anthony lost every Indira Gandhi lost her confidence in Anthony, and Karnagaran became all the more powerful. But that was a very bad thing because of the censorship. There was nothing, no way to take the message to the people. So this sort of unethical act, I was also responsible, mainly responsible for planting this. And the police officers were my friends. The intelligence officers who came to the jail and questioned us 5 times, three from the central union and two from the state police. I had advised all of my friends and colleagues to say that Antony, as usual, he's very wavering, and he changed his position. So what is the wrong? He, as usual, he went back to Congress and supporting Indira Gandhi. But we succeeded in actually destroying the faith Indira Gandhi had in Antony. That we succeeded. But it was a very bad thing that we did. On the first occasion I got, and the officer who got a gold medal came to my house because he's a personal friend and told me. Then only I told you the fact that it was actually a bogus circular. It was never sent, and you did not know what is the question that you should ask. You
Okay.
should have asked me whether circular is true or not. You were
Okay.
interested in creating some uh, what we call some difference between Antony and Karnagaran and
Okay.
reporting it to the center. They had in fact reported like that
Yes. Yes. So
because
no,
my
no.
friend was
Yeah, fine, sir. On the whole, what is the lessons for democracy as far as emergency, that 2 year period? What is the lessons which gives in history to the rest of
the
India,
two things
even
I
today?
will say that rule of law is very important and it should never be destroyed. Secondly, this in the name of democracy, this kind of disparity between people, a section of rich people enjoying every benefit, and
Hmm.
at least 10% of the poor people having nothing to do with the government, no benefit at all. This sort of disparity should be ended. And if democracy in India is to survive in a real meaning, we should go back to the directive principles which in the constitution, which actually wants this disparity should end, and all parties should work for that. Otherwise, the democracy only in name it will survive.
So, what about the personality cult, which is still there in Indian politics?
Yes, personality cult is there in India in all political parties, but that is part of our feudal culture. Still, personality cult at the higher level is waning. It is not gaining in strength, according to me. But the media also is partly responsible for that, and the personal glorification, the family is highlighted. Actually, seeing in India even now, what is a personality cult? Personality cult is more seen among the oppositions. Three members of the same family in parliament. What
Okay.
is her qualification to become to a leader of the political party in India?
So, I'm
And
not talking about
look at the
any
other parties.
political party. Any political party, those in power, there is a group coterie again, around those in power, and they are they are praised or they are made to look as if invincible, and that is the same thing which happened during emergency. And is that good for democracy? That those in
No,
power, they are elected people, so they have to, they have to go by the constitution. Instead, they're being glorified in such a way that they are invincible and they can do whatever they want. Whichever
that is
party
the
it is.
weakness. Yes, that is the weakness. Partly, our people also are responsible. They have got some hangover of the feudalist, princely stage, and some good is there because the princes at that time, Maharaja, some of the Maharajas, at least in the south, they were honest persons, not like the in the tradition of Mughals spending money in the what we call extravagant life. And that was not there in south, at least among Travancore and Cochin Maharajas. They were afraid of ill-treating people personally, not like the Mughals or the Nawabs in the north. That is true. But people can be taught to respect democracy even in the schools. The lessons, constitution must be taught that rights of the people as well as their duties. You know, today, I am very happy that you asked that question. Even today, the first amendment to the constitution, people do not know that was made by Jawaharlal Nehru against freedom of speech and from Article 19. It was Jawaharlal Nehru who curtailed the freedom of expression to save the nation from so-called RSS and right-wing attack. But it was against the constitutional principle of freedom of speech and expression, reasonable restriction. Even today, I read some comment made by the Supreme Court of the Delhi High Court against uh, against the political parties or one what is called that is enmity between two sections of people against
Yes.
some leader made a speech. According to me, there is no place for the law of blasphemy in India. There is a fundamental duty which was included in the amendment to the constitution during emergency to support the tradition that we valued during freedom struggle.
Okay.
Actually, in India, there is no law of blasphemy. The Britishers introduced during their time, in a Karachi case, the law of blasphemy. The law of blasphemy should be removed from the statute book. That is a lesson which I am insisting that, and I am almost 90 and I cannot do anything. Still,
Okay.
the one thing I would like to happen is that the law of blasphemy should be removed from the statute book in India, and responsible officer like say a foreign minister like Jaisankar etc. must say that in public, because our fundamental duties insist that we should respect the constitutional the tradition of freedom struggle, and one of the tradition of freedom struggle or the cultural tradition of India is that India had no law of blasphemy. Otherwise, you will have to ban all the books of Kunjan Nambiar. Here's ridicule, Ganapati. The
Yes.
nonsense. It is not
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Let the noble thought comes to us from all sides. That is a Rigveda. That is a basic. And in Ramayana, our people do not know that Ramayana is publicly Raman has advised his brother Bharatan, and it is a directive principles of government. And he says that you should respect Charvagas. Charvaga means the material philosophers. The name of Charvaga is written there, and nobody knows that. And there is a poem glorified in Kerala again, glorifying Charvaga, thinking that the Hindu religion supported um, people, did not support material philosophers. The Hindu culture, it is not religion, it is a culture. The Hindu culture, what is good is that there is no law of blasphemy. We are totally free in our opinion. That I will like persons like you, particularly who work in Delhi, to read or advise our friends in the media to say that this must be brought to light. Once the freedom to criticize religion and faith is guaranteed, the rest will
Okay.
follow. There will not be worship of leaders, etc.
Yeah, that's a correct stand, but I hope it comes through. So one last question: many people who fought, who were arrested in during emergency in North India, the state governments give them a pension. Is Kerala following that?
I don't support it that. The first time in a meeting, they wanted that I was participating, and I said no, I am against this, and I don't. Uh,
Yes.
Once you are allowed to criticize the religion and any kind of faith, the rest will follow. That was the first obstruction against freedom of speech and expression throughout the history of human um, civilization. If
Okay.
that is freed, everything will follow.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You also were part of, giving us that second freedom, you're part of the second freedom fight. And one wonders what should have happened if emergency continued. What should
In
have been the
fact,
fate
the
of this?
second freedom fight, that phrase was used by this radical group in the first notice they published in the among
Okay.
the college students.
Okay.
So the headline was that for the second freedom struggle, fight
Okay.
for the second freedom struggle. That was headline. Now everybody is
Okay.
using that.
Yes. 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 No,
And
that's just,
I thank you. I
yeah.
thank you for remembering me. It is a long time since we have met.
Yes. Yes. But then, see, sir, you had a contribution at a crucial time of history. You intervened on behalf of everybody. That is more
No, no,
important.
I'm not getting you correctly. I
Sir,
don't hear it.
you intervened in a crucial time of history to regain our freedom, and we are there. We are where we are because of people like you. That's why my
No,
series is
it is
on
not out of
people who
any.
struggle.
It is part of my nature.
Yes.
Even my father was very liberal in criticism, etc. Whenever I want to say something obscene or like, I will say in English. Otherwise, my father was very liberal, and I was allowed freedom to criticize anybody except two persons, Mahatma Gandhi and KP Mahanar. Two persons whom my father had a very great regard. Otherwise, I can attack him or anybody else. Nehru also, I used to do, and he was very tolerant.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for your time, and I will definitely meet you when
Thank
I'm
you very much.
in
Thank you for
Kochi.
remembering me and
Sure.
convey my regards to your friends and family.
Thank you. Thank you.